All right, it looks like we've got a bunch of people here. So welcome everyone. Thanks for tuning in. First things first, we'll kind of go through, I think Jack's can talk a little bit about the overall indexes, the QQQ, and we'll discuss kind of how we're trading in this environment. So Jack, go ahead, share your screen and we'll get started.
Sure, let me pull that up. That. Come on, Zumo. Why is my Zoom not coming through? Give me 1 second to figure out why Zoom is being finicky right now.
No worries. And I can always share my screen and show the indexes as well.
Yeah, go ahead and do that while I figure out what's going on.
Sure. Let's go ahead and do that. Do you see it?
Yes. Oh, I see what I did. Yep, I see your meeting.
Oh, I think let me stop sharing for just a second. Let me move my TC2000 over here. Sorry guys, technical difficulties. It happens. Do you want to share your screen or do you want me to keep going with mine?
Let me just see if I can, as I moved it to my second screen, I think that's what screwed me up. Give me 1 second. You can go ahead and share yours while I
sure.
Go for.
Yep, Jack is calm no matter what the situation, Alex. And let me know in the comments, guys, how are you guys feeling about this market? Do you think we've hit a bottom right now? Obviously, you have to be ready and planning for everything, but let me know your thoughts. We have been finding support lately. We undercut and reversed back above the 65 EMA, which is, I think, a very good sign. But overall, as I pointed out in my recent video, the volume on the down days has been a lot higher than these up days. So this could just be a kind of bounce here, and you have to be ready for either a breakdown or have that watch list ready, which is what we're really going to be talking about in this video if it resumes that uptrend and the leaders start moving once again.
See you, but for some reason I'm not getting my
charting software.
There we go. This will stop other screen sharing.
Yes. Yeah, go ahead. You can stop my sharing.
There we go. How's that?
Yep, see it perfectly.
Perfect. All right. So looking at the cues, because that's what I kind of use to judge the health of the market, because I tend to be in growth stocks. So this was the March 20th bottom right here. And our most recent high was over here on September 2nd. So I just put Fibonacci retracements from top to bottom, right? Very, very simple. And we had the pullback right here. We kind of moved sideways, and now we're kind of rolling over again. So putting it all together, what I'm looking at, two things. First off, I'm looking at what if this is an ABC type move, which is very common in the markets to do. It was 11% to down here. We moved sideways. And now if we take from the top of here and look at 11% down as a measured move type situation, it brings us right to the 0.618 Fibonacci level, which is right around 250. So right now I'm seeing a confluence of an area that has a couple things going for it to potentially offer some, whether it's support or a place for the market to start to carve out a bottom and come back up again. So 250 is the first area that I'm looking for. The second area that I'm looking for is the 50% retracement, which coincides with the prior highs back here in February. So those are my two areas that I think has a good chance of showing maybe some support. My thesis is we are still in a bull market, right? This is not the start of a new bear market. We're still in an uptrend that's pretty strong. So with that thesis, this will be just a pullback within the context of an uptrend. And I think that this little ABC piece right here, this is definitely the first area. The other thing that I'm watching too, and I know we'll talk about that in a few minutes, is the 9-day EMA and the 23-day EMA crossover that happened right here. Obviously that says short to medium term, that there's probably some more down to go in the market, especially as we see them really starting to roll over here and the 65-day starting to flatten. So I do expect there to be, especially this week, maybe some more move to the downside, and before we start to see these kind of flatten out again. The other thing I noticed, if on the way down, we notice an uptick in volume here, and now we're starting to see another little uptick in volume again, which just kind of says we may have a little bit more to the downside to go. So that's kind of how I'm looking at the markets.
Yeah, and I agree. I think we're definitely still in the start of a new bull market. This is just a normal, healthy correction as of right now. Obviously, if it goes through those key levels, I'll be treating it a little bit differently. But as for my own personal trading, I'm very light right now. I only have a 2/3 position in LBGO, and I'm watching that very closely. And I started lighting up during the first kind of leg down, and I was hedging with SQQQ because I saw those leaders pulling back. And I did that just kind of to protect what I had, and I tried to keep some core positions in Zoom, CrowdStrike, but in the end, they kind of hit my lines in the sand, and I ended up selling them for and protect my gains. But overall, I won't hesitate to get back in them at all. And I know, Jack, that you've been also developing your SQQQ hedging system using those key 9 and 23-day EMAs, right?
I have. So yeah. So basically, I try to keep things simple, right? Less complicated, the better. So basically, what I say is on the Qs, once you see this 923-day EMA cross, we're now in a new short to intermediate term downtrend. So instead of selling everything, especially if they're holding up well overall, it's better to take a 10 to 15%. And I did 10%. This is the first time I've actually employed this just within this downtrend. But I think 15% may actually work better. But take about 10 to 15% position in the triple leveraged SQQQ, which is a triple levered ETF. It is not a long-term hold by any means, but for a week or two, especially if the markets are rolling over, you're going to get some downside protection while still feeling okay about holding on to whatever is showing relative strength that you currently have a position in. And it takes, I think, some of the panic out of the really rough days, like this 5% down day. That's a heck of a day. Or this here is even a 2% down day that ends up near the bottom of the range, and that's a rough day right there. So I think that's the goal of for my hedge. It's really more of as much as it saves my portfolio, right? So my down days won't be quite as down as the market. Or there's been many days I was actually up because my positions held up pretty well, and the Qs, the SQQQ, gained on the day. So I was actually up while the market could have been down 2%. So it was so I think it's as much a psychological protection as is a portfolio protection.
For sure. And Tirth, you asked if I could go over kind of different charting softwares. I personally, my main one is TC2000. Jack uses TradingView. I've used TradingView in the past. I think TradingView is very good. TrendSpider is also a very good option. You kind of, I suggest kind of trying them out, seeing what clicks with you, and choosing based on that. So Jack, I have a question for you. So you're protecting your longs using that hedging strategy. Are you looking to take new buys at this point, or are you still kind of holding off entering new positions?
So I am actually taking new buys at this point. Sometimes though they may be a smaller position size than I normally would, but if something is holding up really, really well while the market has gone down, what is this, about 12 or 13%? Let's see from the highs. Boom, boom, about 12% now, right? So the market's down 12%, but if I see something that's breaking out while the market's going down, that's right there. I mean, especially if I believe that this is not a new, fundamental change in the market. So that relative strength is screaming by me before, everyone else realizes that we're back in an uptrend, and then they want to pile into what's, at highs or near highs.
Mhm.
So yeah, I am doing some new buys. I bought some on Friday actually. So yeah, definitely. How about now? Are you just gonna wait it out, Richard? Is that what you're until you start seeing the market stabilize a little bit more? Is that your plan?
I'm kind of doing the same thing as you. I'm taking some kind of strategic trades. I started LVGO late last week. Um, but overall, I am being a little bit more cautious, trying to protect that capital. I think I'm a little bit faster of a trader in terms of time frame than you, so more of the swing trading side versus position trading, which you are. Um, but yeah, I'm focusing on the same things. I'm looking for stocks that are holding up relative to the market. And one thing that I noticed last week is that the Qs and the overall market were making lower lows, while a lot of the leaders were actually making higher lows. So it's always good to look for those divergences. And Duckman17 on Twitter, and I'll post this in the chat, actually has a great document outlining a bunch of different relative strength techniques. And that's great study material. I highly suggest that you guys check that out, and I'll go ahead and find that right now. And while I'm doing that, Jack, could you bring up DKNG, because I think this is a great example of a breakout that's really showing outperformance at this time. And I missed this one, but it had all the signs of a great potential breakout. Look at those big volume up bars. It's really showing quite something right now.
Yeah, this was amazing. I actually own a position here. It's a 1/3 position. And the reason why, so I was watching it, right? And I thought this looked really good. I mean, look at this up, move sideways. And I was watching it, but I missed this breakout, right? So I didn't catch it right here. Actually bought it at the end of the day. And I normally don't do that, 'cause to me, this feels like chasing, right? But when I saw the amount of volume that was coming in and the way that, I mean, there weren't enough people were just buying shares like crazy. I said, you know what? We'll call it take a chance on this. I'll position size down in case we come back and retest the breakout. So I kept a 1/3 position, but I did get in, right around, I don't remember the exact number, but somewhere up here in this top 1/4%. And because I just felt like it was such a strong stock for that, for this breakout, especially with the market going down. And so far it's, I mean, people are just buying it hand over fist right now, and it's still going strong. I mean, this type of move right here, and then this, this high type flag, let me see how much it actually came back.
I think it was like 30% or so. So a little
Yeah.
bit more than the traditional tie-dye flag, but still after a huge move like that,
Right.
it held up extremely well, especially considering the overall market weakness recently.
Yeah. So it moved up 300% from the bottom here, and it retraced only 30%. So only that was 10% of its entire move back. So traditionally not high type flag, but close enough. Anyway, it broke out, and so it reminds me a lot of actually of Workhorse, the Workhorse, and I'll just flip that real fast. Very similar looking chart, and so I'm involved in this one also. And before you go further, by the way, these are not recommendations by either one of us for any particular stock or security, and we probably own, or I do at least, a bunch of these that we're going to go over today. But
For
you
sure.
guys make up your own decisions. But it reminded me a lot of Workhorse, and this was a great looking chart too, and more of a traditional high type flag type of move right here. And so so I got involved in it on the breakout day late. And I hate chasing, man. I'll tell you one thing. That's the one thing. I feel like if it breaks out hard, a stock, I mean, I'll be like, okay, let me wait for it to pull back. And sometimes they never do. They're really strong stocks. You never get the pullback that you're really looking for. So so I took a chance on this one, but looks amazing.
Yeah, and let me ask you this. So since you thought you were a little bit extended at that point, are you going a little bit smaller and keeping your risk kind of your normal amount, or are you still kind of going in your normal starting position?
Yeah, so no, I did a 1/3 position on this one. So 1/3 position this way, because I want to give it all the way back to here, which is actually a slightly greater risk. You know what I'm saying? This moved 17% on this day. I probably got in right around 12. I think it was 12% is when I got in. It was already up 12%. So I wanted to make sure that I can give it, down to, the 43-ish level, just to make, because it could pull back. So I did 1/3 position just in case, and it hasn't looked back since.
And we've got a thought here, a question. Jack, can you implement RS into FinViz or just use it in TradingView? And I think we'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll actually talk about how we're screening for stocks. So I think we'll talk about that a little bit later, unless Jack, you want to add something about that.
No, we'll go through the screening process a little bit later, and I'll show you how I do it, and you show us how you do yours, and we'll go from there.
Sure thing. So yeah, the main stocks I've been watching and looking for entries are stuff like Zoom, Pins, Peloton that are really holding up really well and already, as I said, kind of formed this intermediate bottom. So if we bring up Zoom, I think that's a good example of a stock that's already formed that higher low just after that gap down on Thursday, and then it recovered nicely and moved up really strongly on Friday. Like Friday, it really stood out to me. I think it was the best performing stock of the ones that were on my immediate watch list. And after a huge monster gap up like this, a U-turn like this is very bullish, and I'm looking to buy when it breaks down to all-time highs.
Yeah, and if you look at it, it barely even broke below the 9-day EMA, right? I mean, the whole correction, and it just came down to the 9-day. I mean, one day it closed below it. I mean, that is just as strong. I mean, nobody wants to sell their shares. I mean, that's awesome looking right there. I really do like that. Now, are you working off of, like, do you have like a master watch list that you use, or do you kind of go back and screen and change it up, or how do you do your watch list?
Yeah, so my usual process is to take kind of the top 100, 200 from each of those Excel lists that I post on Twitter, the fundamental rank sheet, the IPO rank sheet, and performance rank sheet. And all of those are sorted by canceling fundamentals. So this is just kind of my way of finding potential leaders. And then I go through in TC2000 and make sure it's over the 65 EMA, make sure it's got a pullback, various different things. But overall, I'm looking for great canceling fundamentals, great earnings growth, sales growth, return equity. And then I take it to looking at the charts and looking for potential setups that fit my style.
Gotcha. Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And Zoom, I mean, you can't ask for better fundamentals than Zoom. Everybody's using it right now. We're using it right now. And the earnings are going crazy as well.
Yeah, and as you talk to people that are, in the business world, the conversations we're having right now is how much space do we really need back at offices, and who can stay at home and work from home, and they're looking to save a ton of money, especially like I have a friend of mine that's a Wells Fargo guy, and they're having the conversations, do we need every city to have a gigantic, Wells Fargo building, or can we kind of downsize and use Zoom and other, things to work from home? And so those conversations are real, because you just found a whole bunch of money if you're a corporation by having people work at home.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's questions about whether everything just going to go back to normal. And personally, I think maybe a little bit, but there's jobs where it's just more effective to have people work from home, like you said, using Zoom, Slack, all those different technologies. It makes people more productive. It saves money commuting, saves office space, as you just talked about. So I think it makes sense that these stay-at-home stocks, I think, are here to stay.
Absolutely. All right, you want to go into some screening stuff, or do you want to look at more charts right now?
I think let's go through some screening. So I guess go through your process in FinViz, and then as we look at stocks that we can take a look at stocks that look interesting. So
okay,
yeah, walk us through your process.
All right, so when I screen FinViz just about every day or so, and I just like to see what's showing up. And here's are 3 scans that I like a lot. So this first one, and just going back to, I'm always gonna, for me, I want stocks over $5. I prefer over 15, but I'll go as low as 5. I won't go under 5 at all. That's like my absolute line in the sand. But I know you like $15 is your kind of limit, right, Richard?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
So again, and I do prefer over 15, but we'll go as low as 5. Volume, minimum trading is 200,000 shares, because it needs to be liquid enough to get in and out, and you don't want somebody to be able to bully it too much. Obviously, the more liquid, the better. And stocks only. For this particular screen, I'm using earnings per share this year over 20% and growth next year over 20%. Very simple. And This one is priced 50% above the 50-day moving average. All right. And so what this is trying to look for is that high type flag type scenario. All right. So something that's got great fundamentals and good liquidity and has moved a lot and is now extended. So it's nothing that is going to be actionable today for me, but it's more of a longer term watch list to see now, does it start to form a high type flag or does it roll over? And, you'll see, Workhorse is on there. Digital Turbine is on there. The Scientific Games is real interesting right now. I don't know if you've taken a look at that one, but SGMS is kind of interesting. So I'll go ahead and take a look at these, and it's kind of like, okay, now I'm going to check these stocks every day to see, are they moving sideways, are they staying in a range, or do they roll over? So that's the first screen that I really do like. The second one is, let's just do that. All right, the second one is, all right, this is a recent IPO screen, right? So within the last 3 years, again, my descriptions are going to be exactly the same. This one has a little bit more volume in there, and I added the IPO. I also added market cap from a mid cap. So I'm looking just for mid cap stocks here. So what this is doing, if you look here, fundamentals, this is earnings per share and sales growth. I'm looking for growing companies and they have to be in uptrends. So how do I define uptrend? Well, if you're above your 20-day, your 50-day, and your 200-day, then I think that you're probably in an uptrend. And what this will do is it's looking for that medium-sized company that is growing and may become a large company, right? So this is, and if it IPO'd within the last 3 years, that is a major growth phase for the company. And so looking for the next big winner, basically, is what this is doing. And there's some real interesting in there. Fiverr's in there, which is kind of interesting. This Sonova, I believe it's a solar company. Tenable's in there. Twist Bioscience. Again, there's some real interesting companies that are showing up in here. And again, it's great. There's 8 stocks in here. I don't have 1,000 stocks to go through. It's a very manageable list. Again, and the market is correcting, so a lot of companies aren't above this criteria here. So I'm looking for the strongest of the strongest.
And Jack, let me ask you this. Somebody asked whether FinViz is free. Are you using the free or paid version?
This is the free version.
Great.
Yeah.
So you can find great stocks using just this simple screener. It's great.
Yeah. And so this is, again, so this is the next big winner, we'll call it. And the last screen we're going to go over is the one I just kind of made up the other day. And it's more of a relative strength screen. Average volume, again, I went up to 500,000 on this. Stocks only, over $5. Fundamentals, EPS, this year, next year, over 20%. And there's my moving average. But I added one little wrinkle to this one. And I want change from open up. So I want to see when there was a gap down, who went in and started buying, and what do those stocks look like? So that's the purpose of this screen. So again, very similar to some of my other screens, but sometimes that one little wrinkle it changes everything. So with this one, I got 34 hits on there. Again, a very manageable screen and some great looking companies on this screen. This Horizon Therapeutics looks amazing. If you're into, that's a drug manufacturer. I be honest with you, I'm staying away from Chinese stocks. I know that they're doing very well right now, but that Luckin Coffee debacle that happened, made me really, really leery of going after some Chinese stocks. So, I don't mind buying, Queb or an ETF, but a specific stock, I think it's kind of like biotechs. There's a lot of individual stock risk within there, but I don't mind buying an ETF of them.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's just added risk, and there's plenty of other opportunities out there. So if you don't want to, that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, definitely. But so this screen is kind of what I did and then what I do with this after I get this, I'll usually write down all the names, or I use 2 computer screens. I'll move this to the side and I'll open up my trading view and I'll just plot each one. Boom, Abbott Labs. What does it look like? Apps. What does it look like? and I use paper and pen, and I start making, writing down tickers that are either looking really good or setting up, or, and there you go. There's my watch list, and now I'm, going to go forward from there.
Perfect. So let me, I guess, go through the screens that I use. So let me share my screen. There we go. Can you see that?
Yep.
Yeah. So normally what I do, as I said, is I copy and paste the top 200, 100 from all my different lists. And I do a couple different screens here, especially if the market is below the 50-day moving average. I like to just make sure that all the stocks I'm looking at are above that 50-day. So I use the TC2000 coding language to just do this. So the average of the close, and just make sure that everything I'm looking at is above the 50-day, because by definition, it's kind of outperforming the market if it's above the 50-day when the overall indexes, the QQQ, the SPY, is below that average. And then, as I have said before, and Jack, you mentioned this, I like over $15, $20 usually. That just kind of weeds out the really low price stocks, which can be great, especially if you're focusing on high tight flags. But for the most part, when I'm trading stocks that are a little bit more expensive. And I actually prefer stocks over $100. So this is kind of my low point for my criteria. But over 100, I find I trade better, and they just work out more easily. And then my final condition is, criteria is stock 10-4. So this is the 10-4 stochastic is less than 10. And this is my first thing. And then I go 20, 30, 40, all the way up to 100. So I'm basically going from very oversold all the way to potential breakouts above 80, 100. So I'm looking at that full range. And then I just flag the ones that look good for me, and build my watch list, my watch list from there. So that's kind of my main process, but I also have developed a few different screens. So this one, if we take a look at it, this is my relative strength outperformance screen. So you've got the daily closing range, so where the stock closed on the day. And let me zoom in, let me cancel and zoom in here just so we can explain that better. So on this day, it closed in the upper part of the trading range, which to me shows a lot of strength and conviction. Jack, do you kind of see it the same way? When it's,
man.
Yeah.
100%.
So on the breakout, I mean, look at this close. I mean, Jack, you were talking about how you were probably buying it a little bit extended, but it closed right near the top of the trading day, had almost an inside bar the next day, didn't give back much at all, and then it's just kept going, closing higher than it opened every single day. So to me, that's a sign that a stock is doing very, very well. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of the first condition here. I want to make sure that it's in the top 85% of the trading range from the low to the high. Then I wanted to see a new high in terms of RS versus the S&P 500, and a new 52-week high is that, and then over $20 again. And then, like you, I kind of wanted to have at least decent liquidity, and dollar volume is basically the cost of the stock versus the average daily volume. So you like 200K, 500K shares. This is just another way of checking that. So that's my kind of high RS stocks, and a lot of them are very similar to what you brought up. We've got HCNP in here. We've got DKNG, Twist. So there's many different ways to find these top stocks, and we're kind of all looking for the same conditions. Apps, new highs, that's fantastic. GSX is doing decently. NVTA, I think you're a fan of this. I don't know if you have a position, but it's been doing really well.
It shook me out.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
it's
right there. Here. Yep, right where you're pointed. It shook me out right there, and then it reversed and went higher.
Yeah. And I like this convergence of all the moving average right here. It's a good sign that the base is, this is usually good low risk entry when you've got the price right near all these moving averages. And I know you look for that, Jack. So yeah, that's a good one. Reggie, I was looking at the stock, but I never pulled the trigger. You had a nice breakout here, closing right near the top of the trading range, pulled back a little bit, but never even broke the 10 EMA. That's this blue line right here. So this has been great. And overall, I think solar energy stocks have been doing decently. I know Sedge, which was the former leader, is kind of struggling here, but EMPH retook the 50-day, and you also have stocks like Run and VSLR that are doing quite well. So yeah, this could be an area that I'll look to buy, and you can always use TAN, the ETF for the solar stocks, to play that, and you could buy that as it breaks out above this pivot or above this high right here. So that's one of my RS scans, and then the other one I want to share is kind of my high tight flag scan, similar to yours, and it's a little bit technical in here, but basically I want at least a 90% flagpole, and then I don't want to see it give back more than 30%, and then I'll go through all these manually and try to find good setups, because even if they've advanced 100% in a short amount of time, there's not always that good low risk entry that we look for. And even here, it's a little bit faulty because OTRK closed below the 21 EMA. And in a high tight flag, you want to be as tight as possible under that flagpole. Yeah. But there's some good stocks in here. XP is doing well.
Love that one, actually. That's on my list. Yeah. That's a really good one.
I think that'll be on my watch list as well. I mean, look at this run that it's had and the volume coming in. I mean, these are clear signs that it's under accumulation.
Then look at the pullback. It's no volume. Nobody selling.
Yep. And
yeah, right there. I mean, if you go just to the right there, look how low the volume gets.
Yep.
Right there. Yeah.
And Leif Sorede, the investing champion of 2019, he likes seeing a really low day before it takes off. So keep an eye out for that. It did kind of move down late last week, but I mean, it's still actionable. I think it's right near the 21 EMA. So, and the entire pullback is 23% if you count this low, and if you count the close, because it reversed nicely on that day. I mean, it hasn't given back much at all, really, considering this huge move, 400+%. I mean, this is high on my watch list.
Yeah, strong stock.
Yeah. Any other that are really catch your eye? We've got Penn, which is also acting well, along with DKNG. I mean, this is great RS. This entire, I don't know if there's any other in the group. Do you know of any other stocks in the same kind of betting theme as those two stocks? Those seem to be the leaders.
Yeah, I think those are especially with the online betting. Yeah, I think those are the two leaders. You know, some of the casinos and stuff like that are looking okay. I'm in Boyd right now, BYD. Mm-hmm. And I was in LVS, Las Vegas Sands, and I sold that one recently on that move right there. But it was doing well too for the kind of a reopening play. I thought it would be doing a little bit better, but it did it reversed, so I got out of it. Yeah.
And just going back to Penn for a second, I mean, you've got a nice clean base and breakout here. Volume coming in. I mean, this is one that Pat Walker would be proud of. Nice, clean, and simple, as he says. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of my main process. And I guess from here, we'll kind of take some suggestions and take a look at stocks that you'd like us to give our takes on. So let us know in the chat what you'd like to see. And I see somebody asking about pins. So this is a good one. This is definitely high on my list as well. You've got a nice earnings gap up on huge volume, and then it's just pretty much gone sideways and worn everybody out, including me. I traded in here and in here as well, and I'm looking to get back in above this pivot. Do you have a position in this, Jack?
I do. I have a 2/3 position in that one right now. I have sold 1/3 of it because I sold my first 1/3 at 5%. That's just my style. It's what I do. I feel like that's one of my risk management. So my first third at 5%, and now I'll wait for that move to happen, and I'll sell my next third at 20%, and my final third I kind of will let ride. But I do own a position I bought in probably someplace. Probably in here, maybe, if I remember right. Anyway, I got 5% out of it already, and I kind of pulled back, but it never broke. Like, it never really said get out to me, so I just didn't. And so far it's just moving sideways. So it's beautiful so far. But it's got to move eventually, right? It's going to have to make a decision. And if it rolls over, then it rolls over and I'm out. But as of right now, market's pulling back, but it's holding up. That's relative strength.
For sure. And before we get too into some other stocks, we did have a question earlier about the VIX and also the put call ratio being relatively low considering we've had this market weakness. So Jack, what are your thoughts on that? What's your takeaway from the VIX not really increasing a crazy amount, and also the put call ratio not jumping up like we'd like to see as fear enters the market?
So yeah, so I think as far as the VIX goes, and I'm no expert on VIX, but I can tell you as volatility comes in, if people aren't freaking out about the market, I think that's a positive. I think they believe that we're in a longer term uptrend, and the big institutions aren't freaking out at this point. So I think that's definitely a positive. As far as put call ratio, I think the bigger signal on the put call ratio is when it gets very bearish. I think that's where the real signal is. It can stay bullish for a long period of time, and we haven't seen that pull back into a very bearish range yet. And that's why I think maybe this week we may see that. We may see a couple of sharp down days this week. It's definitely, I think, a possibility that gets people much, much more bearish. You see the put call ratio lean bearish, and then that would be maybe a sign that a bottom is either in or near. But we haven't seen that drastic move yet. It's more towards neutral now than anything else.
It's trending in the right direction, the put call ratio. But yeah, I think in 2019 when we saw it drop or increase, we saw sharp increases right at the bottom of those intermediate corrections along that bull market. So that's kind of what I'm looking for in terms of the put call ratio. But for me, it's always secondary to the action of the indexes and also the leaders as well. And right now the leaders are acting, there are leaders that are working. So that's what I'm kind of keying in on.
Yeah, there's some amazing charts out there. Like if you start really looking around, like there are some charts that are breaking out to all-time highs while the market's at a 12% correction. Like it's unbelievable what's going on out there right now. And I think that and I'm guilty of this. I used to get really caught up in the indexes, but when you start really looking at the indexes, 30+% is of Qs at least is Facebook, Microsoft, and Amazon, right?
Yep.
I'm sorry, Apple, Amazon, and Facebook and Microsoft. That's 30%, and if you add in Facebook, it's about almost 40%. So, and they're all rolling over, is what it is, right? And they're going to drag the index down with it, but under the surface, there's a lot of strength in there.
For sure. And let's talk about some stocks that people are mentioning. So first one that I see is Twilio. So this is a former leader. For me, at least my take is that it's below the 65 EMA, and I wouldn't really be touching at this point. I think there's better options. What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, agreed. Kind of have a little double top look with a confirmation. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's no touch for me. Yeah, not one I'd be interested in.
Yeah, I think there's definitely stronger ones out there. So let's see. MGNX, I'm not familiar with.
That actually made my list this week, actually, for relative strength. Yeah, looks good.
Yeah, huge up bar right here.
Right, huge up bar and it's just been moving sideways, marking time, really.
No volume relative to this. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that's on my list of watch.
Yeah. And if you want to play more the biotech genetic stocks, there's a good option here. You've got ARCG, which is Kathy Wood's genetic ETF. Great performance this year. And if you want to kind of take away that one stock risk, as we talked about earlier, this is a potential option. Do you have any other great ETFs that you'd like to take a look at, Jack?
So I do look at a lot as far as when I do my relative strength work, when I'm doing my top-down approach. ARCG and all of hers are in my arsenal. I keep actually a Excel spreadsheet of 100 and something or maybe more ETFs, and as I drill down, I'm going back and forth. Obviously all the technology ones have been great, but there's a lot of other ones out there from some good financials ones. I think financials are trying to put in a bottom, relative. They're working on it. They're trying hard. Again, I own, I think, one financial currently, which is Ally Financial. But Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so it seems like a stronger financial. So if they do put in a bottom, hopefully that one is going to be one of the leaders going forward. Again,
Mhm.
small position. It's I already took some money off the table on that one, so we'll see what happens with it.
Cool. So let's keep going. We've got
Mhm.
Sam, which is holding up really well. You had this intermediate bottom here. I like the look of this upside reversal on decent volume. So that's decent. And then you had another upside reversal on Friday, although I'm not, I don't care too much for this volume because obviously there were some options expiring. So, but overall, the chart looks really great. Some very strong moves here.
Yeah. Boston, yeah, that looks amazing actually. I haven't looked at that chart too much, but yeah, that looks really nice.
We've got NUS, New Skin Enterprises. Overall, I would like to see it closer to all-time highs, but it's showing good performance recently. So, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times, I'll zoom out like that a lot, but if I don't really see what I'm looking for, but it's an uptrend, I'll look at from the most recent low and see how it's done since then. So like from March,
Mhm.
okay, so what does it look like since then? Because it's almost like a reset to some
Mhm.
extent. And then I'll try to gauge my risk off of that and look at there, because you can psych yourself out sometimes. Sometimes it's very helpful though, right? But sometimes you psych yourself out too if you go back and you're like, oh, but look at all the supply up here and there's sellers, and it could be.
Mhm.
But maybe we get to that point and that's where we find sellers, and then you miss, a 30-point move.
Mhm.
So
For sure. So the next one, let's take a look at DHI. Yeah, it looks okay. It's got that intermediate bottom, found support right at the 50-day moving average. And overall, the moving averages on my chart, the 10 EMA, 21 EMA, 50 SMA, and then 65 EMA. I think we had some questions about the moving averages you use, Jack. So yeah, what's on your charts?
all right, so I use the 9-day EMA, the 23-day EMA, and the 65-day EMA. And it's funny, people ask me about that all the time. So 65-day EMA, that's about 1/4. Okay, 1/4 of trading days. And so to me, that makes a lot of sense. And especially since I'm a weeks to months type of trader, um, that's my time frame, right? I want to know what in this time frame, from earnings period to earnings period, if you want to look at it that way, what is the stock doing? Is it an uptrend? Is it sideways? No trend, or is it downtrend? 23-day EMA, that's my it's about 1 month of trading. Some people use the 21-day. I think that's fine too. They're very, very similar, obviously. 23 gives me just a little bit more wiggle room than the 21-day, and my bias should be, if it's a strong stock, to stay in the stock, right? That my buy, if it's strong stock, so don't get shaken out if possible.
Yeah.
So I'm using the 23-day EMA. Again, it serves the same purpose as the 21-day, just gives me a little bit more wiggle room, maybe a little separation from the crowd in that case. And the 9-day is obviously my short term, and I'm using that mostly for when I need to put a hedge on or not put a hedge on. And the strongest stocks don't really close below the 9-day. And for you, it's the 10-day. But it's, again, the same purpose, I would
Mhm.
think.
And I just brought up a chart of Zoom because you can see a couple times it found support at the 65 EMA after just kind of going through the 50 a little bit here, found support at the 50 here and here. And then here it came through the 50, but really held at 65. So it's really helpful in those situations where you want to stay in the longer term trend of the stock. And you don't want to get shaken out of a stock like Zoom. This is one of the model book stocks of 2020.
For sure. For sure. Exactly. And that's a great example how, and again, you don't know if institutions are doing that on purpose or the purpose of that, who knows, but they do know that people put their stops right below the 50-day EMA. That is, or SMA really, 50-day
Mhm.
SMA. And so they may come out, hit those stops, knowing that they're all sitting right below the 50 SMA, and then boom, they buy those shares and it goes right back up. So, similar to what happened in, was that August? Yeah,
Yeah.
right there. So yeah, so that's a good point for the 65.
Cool. So let's keep on going and let's take a look at some more stocks. So apps is a good one to go over. I know I messed up my trade. I talked about in my video. I had my stop at the low of this close. I should have kept it at break even. But I mean, yeah, that's my bad, but I learned from it, and I'll know better in the future. So, Jack, I think you still have a position in this. So,
I
where did
do.
you get in, and what was kind of your signal to enter, and how are you trading this stock?
So it's funny. I was in apps way back in over the summer. So
Mm,
the first breakout way back here. And
this one right
then
here.
no, where was it? It was like June or July or something. So yeah, it had to be there. Yeah, it was exactly right there. Yep. I
That's
bought that
great. That's a
breakout.
great looking chart.
Yep. And something happened and I basically sold my shares. And I don't remember what the shakeout was, but I sold them. You know, it's probably right there. It's probably when I started basing. It went all the way up. And then when I started basing again, it had that one big down day. I think it shook me out. If you go, a little further down the line, I got out of it. I like, hey, I made some really good money on it. It was great, whatever. And then I got back in it after I saw that it was just basically just biding time and it broke back out again. Um, and so it may have been as it started to rotate back up. I tend to front run my trades a little bit. It's just what I do. I mean, everyone has their own style. If I see something that is kind of setting up, I'll go ahead and do it if I feel like the risk reward is worth it for me.
Mhm.
I don't mind doing that. So yeah, so I've been in it now for a little bit, and I took some money off already at the table, which is great. I believe it's just let it ride shares for me. I'm down to a 1/3 position in this one, and
Mhm.
and it's been working very strong looking stock. I'll let it keep going. I hope it goes to 100.
Yeah, I hope so too, for your sake. And this is a long term base.
Yeah.
I don't like honestly. I think this isn't entirely relevant anymore. I mean, this was way back in '06, but it is potential resistance, so keep that in mind.
Good
But
point.
if it can keep moving up, I think this is. I mean, this is one of the leaders right now in my view.
Yeah, it's looking great. That and I think Workhorse is another one that looks amazing. We mentioned that one earlier too. That one just absolute
Mhm.
beast.
And it's very important to look at the volume profile here. You've got huge accumulation on these up days, and then within the space, as we talked about a little bit before, it really quiets down, and you've got some pocket pivots in here as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, this chart, it's one to study.
Yeah, that was like I bought it on with your prior line right when it was kind of getting pinched between the downtrend line and the moving averages coming up, all kind of bunched up together.
So you
That
bought it right
was
here, this one.
right around there. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't remember the exact date, but somewhere around there. And then boom, it just exploded higher. And again, I'm now let it ride shares, and I don't mind if it vacillates or whatever oscillates a little bit. It's fine. I'll let it go as long as it can.
Sure. Okay. Let's take a look at GRWG, Grow Generation Corp. And this one did have some news here. You've got a potential activist shorting scenario going on here, so keep that in mind. But overall, I mean, it dropped down 30% or so, but then it's just been going sideways and quieting down while the market's really in this pullback. So this looks pretty good for me.
Yeah, it's on my list also as far as relative strength goes. I do like that one a lot. I mean, it's it's just a strong looking stock. It's in again because it's in the marijuana industry, right? It's there's some I think increased volatility.
Mhm.
Um, but that wouldn't stop me. Let's talk about CELH because this is one I started on Friday. This was my position I bought on Friday, and I was and it's funny because so one of my rules is don't buy before 10:15 a.m. But I saw this one starting to really move right off the bat, and so I bought some. And it kept moving higher and it was great, it um and then it reversed and it went
So
lower.
So this is a 15-minute chart. So 9:45 ends this one, 10, 10:15, right at your usual rule,
Hmm.
and then it
Boom.
falls back down. And this can happen, especially, and it's going to happen more when the market is a little bit weaker. So
Yeah, so that was so I'm down 3% in the position right now. I still have a full position of this one. Um and but somebody will ask, well, why didn't you sell? Well, first off, I'm only down 3%, so it's not like I'm down all that much. Second is when we zoom out, and if you go to the daily, or if you just zoom out that way, I mean, look at this gigantic run, and now it's kind of moving sideways.
yeah,
Um
yeah.
and it's funny, I was gonna do some research. So I went into a Walmart store and I couldn't find anywhere. I don't think they sold it. So it shows you how there's opportunity for them to get into more retail spaces and more places. So I go to Publix.
Yep.
Um, but but it moved higher. It's moving sideways. It's still a really strong chart.
Mm-hmm.
It looks great, and I think that it still has higher to go. I mean, it's relative. I mean, it's above your 10-day. You know, kind of stopped right at the 10-day line,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of recovered a little bit.
And I had this level posted because this would be a great entry, but obviously hindsight is 2020. But it's a slight undercut of this gap up day, and then the buy point. And I learned this from a Gil Morales video. You undercut a relevant low within the base or the gap up day, and then the trigger point is as you buy as it passes up through that low. So usually your risk is incredibly small because you just use the low of the day as your stop, and you've got a 1% risk and pretty good reward. And if it finishes right near the high of the day, that's a pretty good cushion. Obviously, they don't all work like this, but this was a good potential entry on this stock to get in a little bit earlier, and you'd have a nice cushion going into here. Yeah.
No, that's a good point. I'm glad you mentioned that because I didn't know about that. But that looks great. That would have been a perfect entry on that one. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, hindsight's always 2020, but that's something I picked up from Gil, and I think it's useful in a lot of situations. I tried it recently in AMD on this day, and also this day is here, but it worked out okay, especially on this day. And I was using the relevant low of this of 911 as my entry point, and I added as it broke the 50. Sold out on this day. I was being a little bit quick to sell here, but yeah, it doesn't always work out. But Fastly is another good example of when it works really great. You undercut the relevant low right here, have a nice upside reversal, and you have a decent amount of cushion in a strong stock. And Fastly is a good one to talk about, actually, because it's also one that had a monster move, but has been going sideways and has a little bit of a head and shoulders look. So, Jack, what's kind of your take of Fastly here?
I mean, for me, it's below most of your relevant moving averages.
Mm-hmm.
So until those can flatten and price gets above it, I'm really not all that interested. I think it's going to probably a great company and it probably will get above them at some point. But until it kind of proves that to me, I think there's going to be some more downward pressure. Now, when price starts to come back up and you see those moving averages either flatten up or start moving up with it, that's when I'm interested.
Mm-hmm.
You have a nice downtrend line right there. Also, I mean, have to break that downtrend line for me to be for early entry type consideration.
Yeah, and as a rule, whenever I see a gap down like this on volume, that's a potential red flag for me. Usually, I don't want to be seeing that anywhere close to a potential entry. It's just added risk because people really want to get out in a hurry. And I think that was actually after the earnings report, which was fine, but I think it didn't quite meet the expectations or exceed the expectations enough, especially considering it was up 40% in 5 days right before the earnings report. But yeah, a decent company. It's one I'll be keeping an eye on. I think it's a good one to gauge sentiment from. So
yeah, it doesn't make it a bad company. It just means it's just not time yet for it,
Yeah. Let's see. Are there any good questions here? So people are saying Fastly looks like a good short. Yeah, if it bounces off the 50-day and moves down on volume, that's a potential short entry. Personally, I don't do much shorting. I think I don't have as much of an edge there. So why do it if you don't have an edge?
I agree with that. I think I've never had very good luck with shorting either. And let's be honest, the market goes up a lot more than it goes down. So odds are on your side to play on the long side. At least that's the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm. Same here. All right, let me pick out some more stocks. We've got a request for band. And this is a little bit wide and loose here, but overall it's above the moving averages, decent volume coming in. But yeah, I think I personally would want to see it tighten up before a potential entry.
Yeah, I agree with that. Again, it's above all the moving averages. I mean, it's looking, not bad. I mean, but still in a range. Hasn't really, again, proven itself quite yet. That's the way I look at that one. Just it hasn't proven itself yet. There's a few of them that I'm watching that are within ranges, and they just are kind of just chopping around. Well, time is an opportunity cost also. So we, could chop around for another 2 months for all we know. So, pins is kind of like that in some ways. It may be getting ready to move now, but I've been in it for about a month or so.
Yeah, same here. I think everybody on Twitter has been in pins for about a month and a half now as it just goes sideways. Let's see. We've got SLQT. For me, I wouldn't be touching this, especially considering the action on Friday. It did have an earnings gap up or some other news, but it
Hold it.
cut. Yeah, it didn't hold that low, which I view as key mostly. It doesn't look particularly strong, at least in my view.
Yeah, agreed.
Let's look. We've got Plug. This is a potential high tide flag. It's acting well. Yeah, strong stock. Is it in the EV space? I think it is.
I don't even know.
I'm not sure. But the EVs in general, you've got. Oh, sorry, I cut you off. But I was
no,
just
you're fine. I just don't know. Yeah. See, NEO, I love the chart, but it's a Chinese name, so I just keep it off my list. But I love the chart. I mean, the chart looks amazing.
Yeah. And you've got the leader of the leaders. We've got Tesla here, which is acting fine. I'm looking to buy as it breaks through this pivot and adding it to all-time highs. But look at this perfect support off the 50-day. This was a strong line of support here, and I think it's up about 30% from that entry. But I didn't take that trade. I was playing it safe here. Yeah, have you been trading this at all this year?
I haven't actually. I've just, for whatever reason, have not touched Tesla this year at all, and I missed a lot of great moves, but haven't touched it. Hey, what do you think of GH?
Yeah, let's bring that up. Yeah, I like it. I think you also posted this this line on Twitter. Yeah, a nice breakout retest. This was support right here. This isn't kind of my preferred setup, but it looks strong. Great volume coming in on Friday. Looks good for me. And I don't know anything about their fundamentals really. Do you have any insights there?
They're okay.
I can look on Market Smith.
Yeah, pull up a market. Yeah, Market Smith would tell you better than I could offhand.
Yeah, let me drag it over. Can you see this, or are you still seeing TC2000?
I see TC2000.
All right, let me share that real quick. So this is Market Smith. This is kind of the O'Neill premium product for consumers with you can screen, you can look at charts, you can look at fundamentals, and mostly I use it to take a look at the earnings and sales. So you've got some revenue growth in here. Great fund ownership. So you've got a bunch of the high quality funds in here. Increasing funds. The estimates aren't great, but overall this is a biotech name. So that's maybe to be expected.
Yeah. Yep. It is what it is. But yeah, the 100 level, that's kind of my line-ish in the sand for this particular one. And I look at things on, by the way, I try to wait till closer to the close for me to make my decisions about selling, because a lot of things can reverse midday or, positive or negative. So I try to wait closer to that, 3:30, 3:45-ish time just before I decide whether I want to sell or not.
Yeah.
And I use mental stops, by the way. I know I like the 23-day EMA, 2 closes below as where I think something has failed for my system. And so that's very visual. If I see, when I check my stocks, either late in the day or overnight, and I see it's 2 closes below, that's a sell.
Yeah, I think that's a big lesson I've learned this year, and I still need to work on it. Is getting shaken out of strong stocks when I have a good profits in them on those quick moves down in the morning, and then they reverse by the end of the day. So yeah. I think I can learn something from you there and be a little bit slower. And Ross, one of my interviews also talked about that, trying to wait to sell until the close, but pretty much keeps you in the stocks.
Yeah, definitely helps.
So people are asking about Docusign. So this, to me, a former great run here, but it's not acting great right here, except for maybe this past Friday. But overall, I think it's still basing for me. Yeah.
Underneath those moving averages, kind of rolling over, kind of. So it definitely needs some work.
Yeah. But overall, great earnings expectations. And if we talk about CanSlim fundamentals, I mean, this is a great example of what I like to see. You've got earnings over 100%. You've got 999%. Sales growth near 50%. Return on equity is fantastic. Great annual EPS estimates for both this year and the next year, increasing fund ownership, and 4 high quality stocks in there as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
looks good. Maybe just need some more time.
Yep. And overall, the RS line, so this is the price versus the S&P 500 and just plotted here. And this is very useful. It kind of gives you a sense of underperformance, outperformance. And you see a big spike here, but then it's kind of been trending down recently, although you do see a little uptick on Friday. So keep this in mind. This is a great thing to add to your charts. Whatever charting software you use, you can pretty much add this. And let me bring back TC2000 and let's get some more stocks. So I see Peloton mentioned. That would be a good one to talk about. That's been holding up really well. Can you see TC2000?
Yeah, we're good.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, a little bit choppy in here, but acting well, holding above that 21 EMA, definitely the 23 EMA. So looks good for me.
Yeah, I mean, Peloton looks real good. I mean, it's obviously, people that say, oh, it's a big dust collector or laundry collector or whatever. But the stock price, we don't care if that's the case, right? I mean, the most important thing is the stock price going up and holding up well, or is it going down? It doesn't matter that they think that 6 months from now or a year from now that it may be, out of business or whatever. That's not my problem, really. If it's an uptrend, then we got to consider buying it. If it's not an uptrend, then we step aside and let somebody else buy it.
Mm-hmm.
And
mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add. So just in general, this is a recent IPO. It had its first major move out of kind of the main IPO high here. And this is a great setup or kind of process to focus on stocks that are just out of their kind of IPO turbulence zone. And this is based on the methodology of the life cycle trade, which is a book by a bunch of authors, Eve Bobach, Kathy Donnelly, great read. And you can see that it tried to break through this line here, failed. But then the second time, I mean, this started this entire move. And you can see this in Fastly as well. You have the IPO high here. It has a earnings gap up and then just keeps going up 100%. So yeah, I like to focus on stocks like this. And I know you focus on IPOs as well.
Yeah, I think, within the first 3 years, I think that's where you're going to get those really good entries,
There's so many great examples this year. You've got Zoom doing the same thing.
Yeah, amazing.
LVGO. I mean, look at that. It works. It works like a charm. I mean, you could have bought it back in here, but this isn't a bad buy point when it stocks up 400% in just a few months. So
try put up Beyond in there, BYND.
Yep.
So that's one that caught my eye this weekend. I like how it's kind of came back and now it's making that turn back up again. Mm-hmm. This one looks pretty good.
And I like the volume signatures here, pocket pivot signatures. And I'll probably wait for maybe a handle to form, but it might have a true breakout. So you never know, above 166.
Yeah, exactly. So a little handle or some sideways movement right there would be absolutely perfect.
Mm-hmm. And this was a monster right at the beginning, but then you've had all this time to consolidate, and this is the first kind of standard base. You kind of have some consolidation here, but it's pretty V-shaped here. So this is nice.
Looks orderly.
It's orderly. Exactly.
Yeah, it looks orderly. Where that looks kind of crazy, all over the place.
Let's see. Let's talk about CrowdStrike as well, because this is holding up really, really nicely. And this is once again a recent IPO, just above the green line, which is the IPO high here. It's only about 30% from it. So this probably has a lot more expansion in the future, but you have to wait for that good proper buy point.
Yeah. Now I did get involved. See your downtrend line right there as it was kind of breaking out, and see how the moving averages kind of came back and aligned back right again, right in that area. I did buy some, got that little spike up. I sold some into there, and now we've been kind of basing and going sideways. Yeah. So it's one I do own, and I think this one is one that could go a lot higher. But again, I won't say stuck in it because I'm happy to have it. It's, the market's gone down and this has gone sideways for the most part. But I'm now, my money is tied up in this one, at least partial position.
Yeah. And Raul asked about Wayfair. So this has had a monster run since the bottom. You talked about this kind of resetting everything. This is up a decent amount, not too shabby right there. But yeah, it has pulled back about 30%, which is a little more than I'd like. But I mean, it's showing something late last week. What do you think, Jack?
Yeah, so Wayfair was pretty cool, especially with the stay at home thing. Everyone was buying online, so you saw Amazon rocked. Chewy was really going, and Wayfair was also doing really really well. Um, After a run like it had, a little pullback like that doesn't bother me. I mean, it's not a position I'd get involved with today. I think it has maybe some more, right side of the base to kind of build out a little bit before I'd want to get involved with this one. But it's definitely, moving up ahead of the market. So it may show some relative strength in that way.
Hmm.
But again, I'd want it to kind of build out that base just a little bit more for my, maybe make a little more of a cup or something like that.
Hmm. And we've got someone asking about pins. We already talked about that a little bit, but just to reiterate, it's got a nice power earnings gap and just gone sideways. And I'll be looking to buy as it breaks out. But we already talked about that a little bit, so we'll just leave it at that. And NLS, similar to Peloton, but it's acting really well. Great volume coming in, trending above those moving averages. Looks pretty good.
Yeah, it's interesting with all the, with Apple now announcing also, and you have Mirror with the Lululemon and
Hmm.
all, that's becoming kind of a crowded space, as far as, and there's a lot of dollars to be had, but the more people that enter the market, the thinner that market is. Again, that has nothing to do with technical analysis, just kind of like one of those ideas that as more and more people want, the barrier to entry isn't very big right now.
Yeah. And in that sense, I think focus on the leader is a good way to go because I think Peloton for me is the leader in that space, just based
100%.
on the price action. And
Yep.
Lulu is a good reminder to follow your rules and take a little bit off as it breaks those key moving averages, especially when it breaks you that 50 and 65 EMA, because these growth stocks, when they break down, they really break down hard.
Yeah. Yeah. They go down crazy. And it's brutal, right? It's painful. I mean, it really is painful.
Yeah.
Let's see what else is on the list that we like.
NVCR is a potential high tide flag. This came up on my screens, but it's not actionable here for me. It needs to build out that actual flag before I would potentially enter.
Yeah. What about CLSK?
Sure.
That's what I've been watching for a couple of weeks now. I have no position in this one.
Yeah, it looks good. Great action on Friday.
Yeah, good action on Friday. So that's one that I'm real interested in. It's one of my top on my high on my watch list, the CLSK, and Datadog also, DDOG. That's one we haven't looked at yet. That's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think if we zoom out a little bit, it's kind of had a big move up, and then you just see it kind of is just a sideways movement. I mean, it has a little bit more work to do, so it's not one I'm involved in, but it's one that if it can, the downtrend line right there, it can
Let me try to draw it. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah, something like that. Right. So if we can get back above there, that may be a nice little entry right there.
Mm-hmm. Potentially kind of a double bottom or longer term cup feel. So yeah, it's a nice base after a strong move. Nothing wrong with this chart, but not actionable for me at this time.
Right, exactly. Same thing. It's definitely just one of those ones that's just high on my watch list. And if it continues to act good, then that may be a different story.
Yeah. So Mark was asking about, I typed in Mark. Mark was asking about Roku. And once again, this is near a relevant all-time high, but it's consolidating now, but it's holding above the 50-day. It looks good for me.
Yeah, I mean, I love Roku as far as the chart looks, and I use the product myself. If it gets over that green line that you have, yeah, I mean, and look how it's kind of got that VCP kind of feel to it, right? I mean, it just keeps each pullback is less.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you go back over the last couple months, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just making higher highs and higher lows. So so if we get over that green line, I think that and really the fundamentals on Roku. Again, I follow the fundamentals. I'm not a huge fundamental guy, but they're stellar and they're unbelievable.
For sure. Let's see. Sky W. I think this is no touch for me. I mean, really sharp correction, and it's got right now that kind of pump and dump feel where you've got the shorts in control, and that's not really a dynamic that I like to trade in.
Yeah, no, this is not one that I tend to look at either, and I'm not interested in this one.
Yeah, let's see.
What are some gold miners? Put up like a EGO.
Sure. Yeah, it looks good. Maybe building the right side of a short saucer right here, and great volume action. And the gold in general looks like it's in a kind of flag. So yeah, these are ones to consider for your watch list for sure.
Yeah, it's one that's, you know, that's kind of interesting the way that and that's what's actually, you know, the market's like gold miners are doing pretty good overall right now, which is kind of interesting, right? I mean, I don't know if that's an interest rate play or if that's dollar or that's, you know, something else, but it's kind of, there's a handful of gold miners that are looking good too, and I think you know, yeah, and if you actually zoom out on this one, like to like a weekly or monthly. I mean, it's just like, you know, it's building that right side, and it's just kind of, now it's got this flag looking thing, you know, it's, yeah, I mean, it looks holding up well. I mean, it hasn't got over that 44.10-ish mark yet, so it's just underneath where it needs to be. But I think, you know, Pan American looks good. I think, is it still in the IBD 50? It was for a while.
Maybe, I'm not sure.
Okay.
Let's see. We've got Chewy. That's a good one to take a look at. So this is, again, it had this quick spike, and now it looks to me like it's building a base, and it's holding that 65 EMA, which is good, but you do have some big drops on volume.
Yeah, and I got out of this one on some of those as it turned over there, and it did two moves underneath the 23-day EMA, and I was out of this one, so I sidestepped some of that down move.
Mm-hmm. So we've got a question: what is a pivot point? So I guess I'll answer first, and then Jack, I want to hear your take as well.
Okay.
A pivot point for me is kind of a relevant high that kind of marks the buy point as a stock comes out of a base. So here you've got some pivot points at these highs right here and right here, all at about the same price range. And then the buy point is as it comes through that level on above average volume. So for me, that's kind of what a pivot point is. You've got cup and handle pivot points. You've got pivot points within shelves like this. Yeah, that's kind of how I would explain it. What about you, Jack?
Yeah, I mean, I look at pivot points as potentially as two different areas, same as you as far as the breakout area. So it could be an overhead supply area, but I also look at a potential support area as a pivot, right? So any place where price can potentially change direction, right? I think I consider that a pivot point. So it could be a breakout, or if it's on the way down and it finds support, that also could potentially be a pivot point. And that's how I look at my pivot points. It's basically another word for, you know, where supply and demand kind of are.
Mm-hmm. And we've got two questions for you from Paul. So the first one: with your let it ride shares, if a position starts to go sideways and sets up again, and you have your 1/3 in place, so 1/3 position, will you go back with a full position once again?
So it depends on the stock. I would say most of the time the answer is going to be no. If the stock seems like it is one of those really, really strong stocks, and it's like, let's say it's saying up into another high tight flag, that would be a different story. It doesn't happen very often at all. I would say 90+% of the time, I'm going to let that 1/3 just figure it out. And I'm, you know, there's always another stock to buy. Like there's always another great opportunity. And I don't want to ever, you know, be married to that one position. So that let it ride shares, the purpose of it is basically just to be stress free on it. You know, I already made my money on it. I'm not going to lose on this trade. I know that for sure. And now I'm going to maximize my profits as much as I can without having an emotional attachment to that position. So Usually no. That's my answer. But again, you know what? If you follow some of what I do and you think that's a better way to do it, I mean that'd be your style. Then that's okay.
And question for you. So what's your sell point for those letter ride shares? A break of the 65 EMA, a trailing stop? How do you do it?
2 closes below the 65. So I use for the first 1/3 and 2/3, the first bit, I use the 23-day EMA 2 closes below. And then for let it ride, I drop that down to the 65-day and give it plenty of room and want to be in there for a long time.
Cool,
For the right
cool.
style.
And the second question was, how many total positions will you hold? And also let it ride positions versus full positions. And I'm not quite sure what you're asking there, but I think just in general, how many stocks are you in at a time?
So a position size for me is about 15%. That's a full position for me. So I don't like to go more than 15%. And I saw 5% increments for each 1/3 to, for each bit. So depending on how many let it ride positions I have, I usually will have anywhere between 10 and 15 positions. And I'm comfortable with that. Some people like to have 3 or 4 positions and have a really concentrated portfolio. I feel like we'll call it missing out on less if I have more like a 10 to 15 position portfolio.
Cool. And let's see, we've got some more questions here.
What do you
What is
usually
it?
hold? I'm sorry, Richard. How many
Oh yeah.
positions do you usually hold?
I'm shooting for 8 full-sized positions, but depending on the environment, how many stocks are working, it can change. But I think I try to go a little bit more concentrated, and I'm comfortable going up to about 18% in one stock.
Okay.
Yeah. So if it's a Zoom and Tesla and it makes a lot of gains quickly, I'll try to hold a larger position in my portfolio in that one stock.
Right. And you'll actually add on to your positions, right? And I usually almost never do that. I'm always taking money off up, but you'll see the next breakout and I know you've added on, right?
Yeah. So to give an example, so LVGO, I didn't buy down here, but if I had bought it, breaking out of this little cup here, I would have added as it broke out once again of this other short-term consolidation. So as it forms a base, another constructive price pattern, and the uptrend resumes, you add a little bit to your position. And this is similar to how William O'Neill played his stocks. He took some off after 20-25% gains, or when it starts forming another base, and then once it breaks out, you add that back, or even more in his case. He was kind of the master at all of that. But yeah, also when I'm building my position, I kind of dollar cost average up, if that makes sense. So as it keeps adding, as it confirms my entries, I'll add more. So on LVGO here, I started buying as it broke the 50-day moving average, and I added when it broke above the highs of this day. So this kind of short-term pivot entry. And I didn't add on Friday, but another good add point is as it breaks this short-term pivot here.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And somebody asked what a green dot is. So down here, I've got a 10-4 stochastic, and all it is a kind of upside momentum confirmation where you have the shorter term moving out, shorter term stochastic, the 10-4, the red line crossing above the blue, and that triggers it if it's oversold enough, so below 60%. So that's all it is. I hope that explains it. Let's see. All right, we've got a lot of calls for BLD first. This looks pretty good, holding up well. Got some nice volume on Friday, and home builders overall are acting well relative to the market right now.
Yeah. Good looking stock.
Yeah, and people are asking for BRP as well. So there's another potential high tide flag, definitely on my list, and it's holding that 21 EMA nicely. And you have a lot of volume coming in. I'm not sure if you can trust this completely, but it definitely is significant. At least this much. I mean, this is 2.3 million shares compared to the average 50, which is only about 300. So this is significant for me, even though his options expiring.
Yeah.
And it's only given back 15% of this huge run.
That's pretty good. Pretty good. Let's see if there's anything else in here.
Let's see.
Somebody earlier asked for DT.
Yeah,
Did you
let's
look
do
at
that.
that one? That's one that I've been watching for a while. I have no position in this one, but it's got good growth potential, but I think it just needs to get back above those moving averages, and it's just not one that one I'll watch, but not one I'll get involved with.
Yeah, and this action scares me a little bit. The big drops on volume, and also it's a little wide and loose for me. So um, I like to trade those kind of really clean stocks that are holding that 21 EMA really nicely. And once it gets kind of wide action like this, it's just harder to swing trade. So I try to avoid those stocks.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. You were in AMD. Yeah, we did AMD right already.
Yeah, I talked a little bit about AMD, and I missed the perfect breakout here. I mean, I was in it down here, but it's kind of like pins. I lost interest as it just kept moving sideways for like 2 months. But this was a great breakout and quick 60%, I think, from this point.
Yeah, it's good looking, but it's kind of rolling over a little bit now. So it's got that look that maybe it's got some retracement to do.
Yeah, TSM is a semiconductor stock that's acting really well. Yeah. I mean, it tried to break out here, but fell back right into this little price shelf here. But overall, I mean, this looks great. It was holding the 10 EMA here for this entire run, and it's holding that 21 EMA. So looks good for me.
Yeah. TSM of all the semis, that one looks really good.
Yeah. Now let's cover NVIDIA as well, just because this looks okay, but it's still kind of bouncing back and forth here. So TSM looks stronger.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you think about it, anything that's above all those moving averages is relative strength too, right? Since the indexes and a lot of the stocks are now below or crossing or whatever it may be. If you're holding above it, that's relative strength. And that's I think that's important.
GRBK, I'm not familiar with, but like we said, it's above those moving averages. It looks good. We've got this trend line. This would have been a decent buy point.
Pull up SGMS. That's what I mentioned earlier. That was looking pretty good. The scientific games. There we go. Yeah, so that's what I'm watching to see what it does here. Does it base out here? Does it move sideways and create that kind of high tight flag? So again, that was coming off my high tight flag watch list. Again, nothing that I'm going to be involved with right away, but I mean, good volume coming in. If it can go sideways on low volume, then I think that this is a potential for a high type flag, but they may roll over too, right? So of all the, you may have 15 or 20 on your watch list, and maybe only 1 or 2 have real potential to be high type flags.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's just do a couple more. I think we've been going almost an hour and a half now. Wow. Let's see. SQ looks decent. Still needs a little bit of time, I think, but this is definitely one I'm watching, and it was trending beautifully back in here.
Yeah, that was great back there. And again, it's moving sideways, but it needs more time. I mean, it's underneath the short-term moving averages, kind of trapped between them now, getting pinched. So it'll be interesting to see which way that breaks. I think if we're in a bull market, I'd expect that to break back up, right? But I think this will be one of those tells also.
Let's see, we've got a TGTX. I'm not familiar with this stock, but biotech, and yeah, it's acting decently well. Nice volume on Friday, above those moving averages, so looks all right.
Yeah, let's put up a SE.
Yeah, that's a good
I haven't
one.
looked at this one in a while. Yeah, kind of moving sideways in a range, above the moving averages, kind of not bad. Probably needs a little bit more time, but it looks pretty good.
Yeah, I agree. And of the e-commerce stocks, Shopify, Amazon, what else? We got Etsy. Etsy looks like it's holding up the best. And I really like they've got 3 different parts of their business: gaming, e-commerce, and also payments. So definitely a company that's caught my eye, and I'll look to trade this.
Yeah, it was one of those stocks where I was in it like back when it was like 50 or something, and I just didn't stick with it. And that's when I wish I would have obviously stick with it.
All right, Dennis, how's it going? He's asking about VRT, and yeah, this looks good. Trending above those moving averages. You had a nice price shelf here, and it's still close to that pivot point. Yeah, it looks good for me. I don't know anything about this company in terms of fundamentals, but the price actually looks strong.
It looks good. Oh, Dollar General, DG, that was on there. Again, not one that I mean, it was on my relative strength list at some point, but you know, I don't know. It's a dollar store.
Yeah, I mean, usually,
doesn't make it bad, right? Doesn't make it bad, but it's not the group of stocks that I tend to trade in that are high growth, high octane type stocks.
yeah, and even in this kind of uptrend, it's only up 16% in 5 months. So usually, I'm
Right.
looking for faster movers than that, like you said.
Exactly. Somebody had mentioned that one. ABT is one that it's actually is on my relative strength list.
Yep.
That has potential.
Kind of similar action to Zoom as well. You've got the big gap up and then the kind of V shape, U shape here.
Yeah, that was holding up well.
So let's take a look. Run is looking good. We already went through the solar stocks, but these are really strong. Go for it.
No, I say pull up Nova when you're done with this one, because I think Nova is a solar stock that I've been kind of. If you zoom out, it's had a big run, pretty good size run, a little bit of a pullback, and then but now it looks like it's kind of coming out, making out the right side of that base. That's potential. And you see, if you draw a downtrend line, that's kind of what I'd be looking at for potential. Yeah, something like that. If we can get back above there, I like that for maybe like a cheat entry or early entry into this one.
Sounds good. Okay, Jack, do you want to wrap this up with just a few more? And Dimitri asked about SQ. Dimitri, I talked about that a little bit earlier, but quickly, looks good. I'll be watching it, but it looks like it's basing at this point.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, I mean, some others that were on my list, NVTA was on there, which we talked about earlier. That's looking like it's moving higher. I mean, again, it shook me out. So I'm watching that one for maybe a potential new entry. Fiverr, we haven't talked about Fiverr, but that one looks really good.
Yep. Anything near new highs right now is showing relative strength. So that's a big key for me. New highs, new RS line highs. Anything really on the sheet that I shared in the chat earlier is a good thing to look for in Fiverr. I mean, I think it's 2% off a high or whatever, and it looks great.
So strong.
And on a weekly, it's not the cleanest base here, but I mean, this is a monster move. I think this is actually one of the top performing stocks of 2020.
Oh, is it? Yeah. Look at that move. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Wow. SGen, Seattle Genetics. That was another one that was on my list. So it kind of had that downturn, whatever you want to say, but now it's kind of got that double bottom kind of look to it, kind of, just basing, but it's trying to get to new highs. And so that I like that. Again, with the market going down, huge move up. And I don't know, somebody said there was a deal with Merck or something. I don't know, but that one looks really good.
Yeah, all we know is it went up and a lot of people bought it, and that's the key.
Yep. And I'll do one more, which I think looks SPT.
Yep.
And I don't know anything about this one really, but I kind of like the way it looks.
Yep. Recent IPO, it's pulled back and now is going sideways above the moving averages. Looks good to me.
Yeah. So those were some other ones on my relative strength watch list that I'm just kind of looking at. How about you? Anything else that catches your eyes that we haven't talked about?
I think we've talked about most of the ones that I want to cover. Yeah, I think I'm good on my end. Yeah, I think that's a good place to stop unless you've got something else you'd like to say.
No, this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed this. It was good kind of to pick your brain a little bit, see how you look at the markets and get some input from everybody with the questions in there. I think that actually helped out also, looking at some stuff that I hadn't normally looked at. So excellent.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. I just posted Jack's channel in the chat once again. Go ahead, check his stuff out. He's got great videos that he posts every single weekend. Go subscribe to him. Thank you guys all for tuning in. We really appreciate it. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you have any other questions, we're on Twitter. Feel free to reach out. and have a great rest of your weekend.
Awesome. Take care, guys.
Take care. All right. Let me